Let's go ahead and get started.
Morning. No, not morning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to see we have such interest in our goings on today. We appreciate you being here. I think you're going to enjoy our meeting today. We've got an agenda. Should be some of them out there on in the foyer on the little table there. There's also something called a public participation form. And if you want to make comments, we're going to have two opportunities to do that like we have for the 3 years we've been meeting, one at the beginning and one at the end. But fill this out. If you'd give it to our clerk over here, who also doubles as our minute taker, Erica. And if you've already turned it in, that's fine. I've got it here. But mainly we want to make sure we get your name right and your address right so that we can record all that information properly in the minutes. It will also work its way over to me so that when it's time for you to speak, then I can call your name to get that done properly. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that every violation of truth is not only a sort of suicide on the part of the liar, but it is also a stab at the health of humanity. And I would add, Don Durden's extension of that quote is when somebody uses social media to propagate those lies, that stab at the health of human society that he talked about is actually turned into an effort at carpet bombing the health of human society. So I think that will become apparent later today. Our committee, the folks that you see here and others that are not joining us, have been working diligently for 3 years. We did take a little time off during the COVID suspension, and we worked hard to develop a citizen-based, citizen-led, consensus-based transportation plan for Kendall County. Our meetings have been open and transparent. Those of you who are in the audience, I think, can attest to that. And although it's not required as an advisory committee that we do so, this committee agreed to comply as much as possible with the Open Meetings Act. That includes posting our agendas on our own website and our meeting notices in places like the county where we publish other public meeting notices. Detailed minutes have been taken and published throughout our meetings. Each meeting has included not one but two opportunities for public comment. During our time in existence, the committee has solicited and received many ideas and comments from the public. We've also generated some of our own. Each idea that was put forward was considered by the committee carefully, and it was either rejected as not worth pursuing further, or it was put in a stack that says we'll carry that forward and look at it in more detail as we go forward. We are currently in the process of sorting through those that we carried forward, and we're going to put some of those in a program of short-range projects, and some of them are going to go into a long-range program of projects. And some of those suggestions have to do with policies that help us guide the growth of Kendall County and its transportation system. We all of us, including me, and I don't think anybody wanted to meet longer than necessary. We had hoped we could conclude our work this month, but we're not quite there yet. The committee is committed to making our report relevant and meaningful. And so our work will extend on into September. We have a lot of ground to cover today. If you've got the agenda, you can see we do. If we're going to wrap this up in September, we need to get most of that ground covered today. Again, we're happy that there's so many of you here to see us today. If you came for public comment, again, please fill out the form and get it down here to us. And if you came, I'm going to separate these. If you came, and I'll rely on you to be somewhat on your honor system. If you came to talk about the rumors that this committee is resurrecting the Kendall Gateway, I'm going to ask that you put your comments in at the end of our meeting. That will give us time to cover most of our work. Now, some of these folks may have to leave if it goes on too long, but we've got to let this committee do its work. I will stay here, and I think Erica will too, and listen as long as you want to talk about the rumors about the Kendall Gateway, but we can't compromise our committee's ability to do its work. Thank you for being here today, and now we're going to proceed with the meeting. Opening comments. Gary, we'll start with you. John?
One quick comment is the City Hall, there's another training room in the far back right corner that they're showing, the TVs are set up to show this. So if you want more room, you can go back to that back training room, and all this is televised in the back room.
Thank you, Jeff. Ben?
I got nothing right now.
I'm fine, thank you.
Nothing, sir.
Okay, I see that my co-chair, Bob Manning, who is joining us, should I tell him where you are, Bob? We need to turn him up a little bit if we can. See if we can hear you, Bob.
Okay. I'm in the miserable place of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Poor thing.
Weather in the 70s, occasional rain. It's just terrible.
That's not fair.
Did you want to have some opening remarks, or that was it?
I do. I thought about preparing remarks myself separately, but having heard what Don just said, to me it says it all. I want to add one small comment about some of these rumors include a notion, an accusation that the committee is meeting in secret to resurrect this gateway. I find that just this side of insulting. There is nothing this committee's done in 3 years that's secret. So again, everything Don said about transparency and openness and no gateway in our report, and there's no black cover somewhere hidden behind which we say, yeah, we really do want it. That's just true. It's a lie. So we have work to do, and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Are you close to your microphone? We had a little bit of trouble hearing you.
I'll try to turn it up.
I think we got it, but I just want to make sure for future comments that we can hear you well. Okay, we'll move into item 2, which is considering the approval of the minutes. The agenda says July the 5th. We approved those last meeting. So we actually have before us the minutes of July 19th, 2022.
I will move to accept the minutes as long as Ben said it pretty much covers what he was most of the agenda. So if Ben's okay with it, I move to approve. Maybe he'll second.
I'll second, but I do have an amendment on item 2. At the July, I've lost track of dates, but on the July 19th meeting, we approved the minutes of July 5th rather than June 21st.
Okay. Any other corrections?
I amend my motion to include those changes.
In the second.
Okay, a motion second to approve the minutes of July 19th as revised. Any objections to approving them? Hearing none, they are approved. Okay, now we come to the first opportunity for public comment. First on the list is Denise Deaver. And you know from being here many times, the rules about 3 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Denise Deaver, 53 Silent Spring, Bernie, Texas. Still out there in the county. ETJ hasn't grabbed me yet. I wanted to address the audience, if that's okay, to give a few of the people that have spoken to me that they were going to be here so that they have some idea of what we're trying to do and get everybody on the same page, if that's okay.
Well, I need you to speak into the microphone so that we can get the people out in the Zoom world can hear it. I think they'll hear it well if you speak into the microphone as well.
Okay. Any of the audience members that's here to give their testimony as landowners, Please be prepared to also submit your information to the committee in writing, as the young lady that takes the minutes will not be able to capture all of the details that you want to provide to the committee. So anything you have to say today, limit it as much as possible, and please be prepared to submit it in writing at the next committee meeting or via email. I can assist you on that. If there's any questions, you can see me in the hallway if we need to clarify anything after the meeting. Now with my comments, I am advocating for Dr. George Vinnie's video transcript be included in the report. As being a 40-year government worker, I know how that goes. It will be lost. Videos will be lost. There's no way to retain them. There's no way to refer back to them. They're just gone. So we've had the transcript officially completed. We have gotten permission, I believe, to do the PDF version of the PowerPoint. If we can get that completed and all done and submitted through Dr. Vinnie with his approval as quickly as possible, I'd like somehow for this to be fitted in. I believe it's so important. I don't think we'll ever have anything as important in Kendall County as this man's testimony of what he believes is the true status of the karst aquifer in that part of the county. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deaver. Wanda McCarthy, you say you want to talk about an alternative to the loop. That's not, you don't want to talk about the Kendall Gateway. You just want to talk about an idea. Is that right?
Correct. Now, I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I can share it around. You go.
Yeah.
Wanda McCarthy, Ammon Road.
Okay.
I come before you today to resubmit for your consideration a raised HERF 46 upper level bypass as a long-term project solution to traffic congestion and flooding issues in this section of the city and county. I fully realize that you have already addressed this option and voted it down, largely on 2 points. One, it was presented as being too expensive, and two, that TxDOT does not allow multiple connecting entrances onto access roads of the interstate. So I'd like to present to you today some options that may enhance your decision-making process. I believe that with the additional information being provided today, and since your recent vote, that the alternative would warrant another look. It was stated by Mr. Kite that this approximately 2 miles of bridge as an upper-level bypass would cost close to $150 million, and I know that's daunting. Mr. Carroll also provided that bridge construction cost is around $150 a square foot, and I appreciate their input on that. What wasn't presented is the cost of the only option that TxDOT and the City of Boerne want considered: new roads through people's lands, homes, our recharge region of the aquifer, etc. Please note, in gathering this information and in talking to civil engineers, road contractors, and people with knowledge of the topography of the land around the 26-mile loop on the city master thoroughfare plan, it will most likely require, at a minimum, 2+ miles of bridge construction to complete the route. In other words, the cost of this alternative upper-level proposed bypass plus the cost of acquiring nearly 1,000 acres of pristine taxpayer land plus the cost of building the remaining loop. I ask again, as Mr. Kite has given me this example, if you don't get your answer, maybe it's because you didn't give him all the facts. So that's my goal today, to give you the remaining facts to reconsider this option. However, if you choose not to move forward this alternative to traffic and flooding as a viable, cost-effective, long-range project and solution, then I ask this committee, please, I implore you, please, give the community a good, long-range answer to the issues in this area, besides the cities and TxDOT representing again and again and again a loop through our community that will forever desecrate our quality of life and our natural resources we rely on, including the very air we breathe and the water we drink. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. Lance Kyle.
Lance Kyle, 226 Cascade Caverns Road. Good afternoon, Don. Good afternoon, committee members. I just want to ask you guys again, I want to implore you guys to add the Dr. George Venny video presentation transcript to the final report. It's just too important to leave to YouTube. We all know stuff can happen to YouTube over time. And Dr. Venny is we were really, really lucky to get George Venny to speak here and to put the time into his presentation a year ago. I guess it was about an hour and 20 minutes long. That opportunity doesn't come along often, that we have somebody with such a deep knowledge of Kendall County, probably more recharge features in Kendall County per acre than anywhere else in the state of Texas, with 254 counties, I believe. I might get that wrong since I'm not a native. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. Is it when you say he has a deep knowledge of Kendall County, you mean like down in the caves? Or?
So I did speak with Dr. Venny today, and I'd been informed that Lance had already had actually two versions of the transcript created. So I've asked him, would he like to vet those transcripts? He said yes. So he's going to give us one that's going to be a vetted version where he might even add some clarifying points as needed. But I believe it's done by a professional transcript person who will certify that this is, accurate. Certainly we can watch the video if we feel inclined and compare. And then as far as the slides, he said, let him know which slides we'd like to include in that. And so I've offered that I'll take a look and make some recommendations.
Thank you, Ben.
So do we need a motion to include it as part of the appendix?
Let's get through public comment,
Okay.
and when we get into the document, we'll.
Okay.
I think at some point, if we decide to do it, we would take action on that. Brad Gessner, regarding a trails plan.
Good afternoon, Brad Gessner, 125A, Idlewild in Comfort, and I'm here to speak in favor of adopting the trails plan that was adopted as part of the transportation plan. I've lived in cities and visited cities where they've invested extensively in safe trails and paths, and I can tell you not only does it provide recreational opportunities, but it becomes a major source of transportation. I was fortunate just to visit Europe and just got back Saturday and spent some time in Munich and Passau and Vienna. And I'm telling you, those cities are incredible. But what was most impressive is how many people are using bicycles and e-bikes to get around those cities. I took some pictures and sent them to Ben. If we could do anything like what they've done in Europe, I think it would get a lot of cars off the roads and give people a lot of opportunity to get around our beautiful hill country and our cities. And maybe we would all get in a little better shape. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gessner, and thank you for your service on the Parks Advisory Board. Skip Griffin, did you want to talk about the gateway, or did you want to talk about something else?
My name is Skip Griffin. My addresses are 20, 22, and 46 Spring Creek Road and 127 Farm Road 474 in Kendall County, Texas. I've been farming and ranching in this area for over 50 years and will not develop my property, nor will I sell it to anyone that will develop it. TxDOT has marked a divided 4-lane highway across my property, starting at my gate 46 Spring Creek Road and running all the way across to 127 Farm Road 474, cutting off me from 3 lakes, cutting across many pasture lands that I've been working for a long time, and also crossing over a Texas historical cemetery from one of the original founders of Kendall County. And it's recognized by the Texas Historical Society. And that roadway would run right across his grave. No environmental study has been done to all of the watershed that comes through my property and the other properties along the road there. And they feed not only Bernie with water, it also feeds into the Edwards Aquifer. The limestone karst is very sensitive to pollutants, which would be caused by a roadway running across that particular area. The limestone karst is very sensitive. Besides that, it also displaces a lot of the wildlife. And I feed a lot of the wildlife that came out of the Esperanza area every day. And I will put together this so that we'll have a whole listing of what I've made remarks to right now, and I'll even give you some maps. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Again, if you want to speak to the gateway, I'd ask that you hold your comments until the end of the meeting. I believe, Ms. Clark, you wanted to speak to the gateway loop. Dave, is it Lichterman? Okay, we'll do that at the end. Phil Asher, Cindy Bivens, Alex Rudd, you just want to talk about resolution?
That's the primary purpose of my talk, with very minimal reference to the gateway.
Okay, well, let's go ahead with your comment, then be the last one.
Did you want her to speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Rudd.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. I know this committee has worked very hard, and you have also been very clear that you do not approve eminent domain, nor are you promoting the Kendall Gateway. I have made every effort to clarify that your work is separate from anything that the city may have planned. However, I have heard the words that I am concerned about, that despite your hard efforts and your excellent recommendations, the city could still do what they want. And if that has changed, I would like to see that publicized, where we know for sure that the city will abide by your recommendations, not utilize eminent domain, and simply get rid of the gateway. Unfortunately, at this point, the public is exhausted. We've been through the mill, not just with this project, but with many other things. We're being bombarded. In fact, we feel like we're under siege, not just with the drought, but what we see happening to our environment. Back in 2018, the Commissioner's Court very gratefully issued a resolution barring that project. Can the city do the same? Issue a formal resolution, take the lines off the map, have TxDOT take the map away, tuck it away forever in the gone box, never to be seen again. This would go a long way towards reassuring the public that that nightmare project will never revisit us. Unless that happens, unless that happens, and again, I credit all of you, and I'm very grateful for your efforts. Unless that happens, we are always going to be in fear that someday the mandate might come down. We're sorry, your traffic is such a disaster. We've got to fix it. Real quick, before I forget or I run out of time, Dr. George Venny made an excellent statement as part of his presentation to you. He mentioned that conventional engineering methods miss up to 70% of karst and recharge features. I urge you to please include in your report the specific words from him
We need to make sure that his technique, whatever he has done to upgrade and make that more effective, that be used not only for any thoroughfare plans, but also for any development projects. We simply cannot afford to ruin our recharge, diminish it. We are losing our resiliency to these droughts, and as our groundwater is depleted, it will not refill because our recharge is diminishing. Lastly, I want to talk about the presentation of the Bernie Thoroughfare Plan. I have contacted City Council several times, all of them, including the mayor, asking, please, when you present the City Thoroughfare Plan, which again could or could not include your excellent recommendations, that's what we're worried about. Please give us several weeks' notice, put it in the front paper, and also, this is the key, we need more than one opportunity for public feedback. We cannot just have a one-time showing of their plans, their proposition, and what they're going to do, and then be sent away. The public needs time to digest these proposals, whatever they are, talk amongst themselves, share it with people who did not come to the meeting, and then come back, perhaps even for a third session. I don't know why I have not yet received a response from the council. I will reach out to them again. However, you, as members of our leadership and this committee, have better access than I do. So I request that please be utilized and perhaps made public, that they will have opportunities to digest the City Thoroughfare Plan and give feedback on more than one occasion. And I believe that will go a long way towards feeding public trust. Any suspicion should not be directed towards you. But unfortunately, we've been through a lot, and we need reassurance from the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Redden. Okay, the other names I called out, we'll take your comment at the end of the meeting, the second opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to make, if you hear something that you'd like to comment on, feel free to fill out another public comment and get into Eric over here, and we'll make sure you're on the list.
May I ask a quick question about?
Sure.
On Mr. Griffin's TxDOT project he referred to, is that in our list of projects? Has it been cut out? Is it pending, or do we know that?
That's part of the Gateway project.
I don't know that. Bitsy thinks it's part of the Gateway project 4 years ago or 5 years ago.
But it's not currently before us as a...
I don't believe it is. No, sir. Okay, moving on to item 4. We talked a little bit about the Herf River Road interchange and Kaufmann Road. And so at your place in your packet, there is a series of spreadsheets. It looks kind of like this. The very last page at the bottom, there are a couple of boxes with yellow headings. Everybody with it? Mm-hmm. We there? We talked about these some at the end of the last meeting. What I need to do is figure out where we want to go with those. We'll look at the first two projects, number 22 and 25. This is where we're suggesting these are not on the major thoroughfare plan, but the committee is making recommendations that we consider, the city should consider purchasing the right-of-way and building these short sections. The first one is SH 46 and Esser, and this has to do with the extension. Some people, can you pull up 25, Northern? This would be an extension from SH 46.
22 or 25, sir?
22, I believe.
22. You said 25.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was this to add on some square footage for the bike lanes and the sidewalks?
Well, let's get it pulled up here,
Okay.
and then we can.
Is it on your computers?
No, ma'am.
I'd have to go home and look.
We're seeing only.
I'll try to describe this as much as possible. It's the It's the realignment of 46 across the north side of Longhorn
Oh, yeah.
Restaurant, and it would hit Esser Road. And we've seen several variations of that. One is just a little bit south of Longhorn, one's north of Longhorn. And what I'm suggesting is that we move those to TxDOT projects because this is going to involve TxDOT. Does anybody object to that?
Is this the project that brings 46 out of the flood?
It could. There are several variations,
Possibly.
yeah. But I mean, in any event, it's dealing with 46, which involves TxDOT. So that's why I think we need to put it in the TxDOT.
It says recommendation 46.
Okay, this is one of the options. And that would apply to this one as well.
We don't know what that says. Somebody going to point out where each road is?
I'm actually trying to get it on your screen here.
Still can't see it.
So the threshold question here is, should this go in together with the TxDOT projects?
You'd have to. It has to go in with TxDOT.
You looking for a motion, Don, or?
No, just general consensus,
Yeah.
if there's any objection.
So, I mean, the one thing is obviously that intersection is one of the major choke points, one of the congestion points. Does it need to have any special attention applied to it, or does it just go in?
I think the answer is yes and yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it is a TxDOT project, but it's also number one on the list.
Right.
And it was one of the shorter term
Right.
recommendations as opposed to, say, for example, Wanda's, suggested big bridge.
That's correct. Okay, so if you look down in the second box there, at the bottom.
Real quick, can I just ask y'all to speak up because I'm having a hard time hearing? Sorry.
Okay.
When you speak up there, you all got microphones, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Please
that's correct.
speak into the microphone, we probably hear you a little bit better. You sit back, we can't hear you. This lady I can't hear.
We'll do the best we can, sir.
So my
Well,
recommendation
how about doing a
was,
little bit better?
Mr. Chairman, if they could come to the mic also, because I don't think everybody can hear them either when they're not in the mic. Is that correct? I mean,
Let's go back to the second box that's titled Projects That May Warrant Reconsideration. There's one down there that says SH 46 in HERF. And the question there was, we have no recommendation for the intersection in the worst intersection in the county. I'm just suggesting we delete that comment because we now do have recommendations. Everybody agree with that?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Anybody disagree? Okay. So that comes off, okay?
One thing I would say is I think we need, or I need a narrative for this because there are half dozen or
Right.
so.
We're getting there. We're getting
Okay,
there.
thank you.
I can help with the narrative
Okay.
if necessary.
Okay, let's go back now to the upper box. Project 25. This project, can you get to that one, Northern?
Yep.
And I apologize, we normally don't have this many people, but I'll do the best we can to describe the project. If you're familiar with Bernie, then you'll know where we're talking about, but you should be able to see it on the screens on the side or in the front. This project is the extension of Fry Street. If you know where Fry is, if you're at HEB, you're on Bandera Road and you're going, I guess, east, you go across Highway 46, and pretty soon you come to a street called Fry Street. Fry turns to the right, and Fry turns to the left. To the right is Old San Antonio Road. This project would turn to the left, and it would go extend Fry Street across the Cibolo Creek to where it hits River Road. Now, we haven't decided whether we're going to include that or not include that. So I think my sense of the last one was that we were going to include it.
Yeah, the last one, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I objected only unless we'd have a traffic study to see what kind of traffic pattern change it would cause that neighborhood. Because if we stuck that all the way through to River Road, I think it'd change the traffic pattern through that neighborhood. It'd be a different type of traffic, different directions, different folks traveling through there. So that was my only objection to it.
Okay.
And it can complicate River Road as well, where they're at the intersection.
That is correct.
Yep.
Anybody want to speak in favor of this project?
Didn't we talk about the last time the possibility of a pedestrian crossing there, not vehicle? I thought we had that conversation our last meeting. No?
I remember talking about it, but I don't know if it was in the trail committee or not. It would be a project that I think the trail committee would recommend, because those are those nodes, the point-to-point nodes for pedestrian activity. That doesn't really change the traffic and the people walking through there.
Right.
The vehicular would.
The conversation we had was about the impact on the intersection at River Road, like what it would cause right there. Because it would come back out right outside the apartments there. And so I thought that's what we said. We were going to make it a possible trails project.
So is there an exit off of 46 onto Fry, or is it only Fry onto 46?
There is, off of Bandera onto Fry? Is that what you're talking about?
Old San Antonio becomes Fry. If you're driving down Old San Antonio.
Where Kronkowski is?
Mhm.
Becomes Fry.
But will it also have access to 46? Because it crosses over the creek and I assume River Road.
No.
Well, River Road is 46.
Yes, but I mean, is it over that or
No.
is it onto
It's
it?
not connected.
This would connect to 46 or River Road. It would be a T intersection there.
Okay, so then folks on River Road could turn onto Fry Street.
If you follow, if we do this, yes.
So I think a neighborhood study would be the most appropriate thing to look at in terms of feasibility, because that is residential, and it would change, I think, the complexion of the neighborhood. It does give us a crosstown over the creek, which has been an ongoing problem that we're not really solving with any other project.
Well, what it would do, it would solve the high water crossing of the creek.
It would.
And I don't really foresee it to become a major thoroughfare. It's more or less an emergency street. Now, there's some other stuff you could think about. The house, there's a bridge, private bridge off of 46 that's for sale right now. I'm saying there's other possibilities that there's a bridge already existing. It's a private bridge, and I think that property is for sale. That it would tie in to extend the street, so it would create a new network that wouldn't be down existing neighborhood streets. So, but mainly the whole idea there is that you have another high water crossing. That you don't have to depend on her road.
For emergencies only.
Emergencies, yeah.
Okay, so what I've heard is there's some support for this. If there's no study that goes along with it to assess the impact on the neighborhood, there's the support erodes. But I'm inferring that there's support for carrying this forward, provided we do a study on the impact of the neighborhood.
Do that.
I'd be agreeable to that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then, and we will carry that forward as a local government project.
Does that mean you're all agreeing to move forward with that, or you're agreeing to discuss it? I don't know what you just agreed to.
What we agreed is to move it into a bucket of projects that we will look at in more detail in a little bit if we can get to it, and decide whether that's a good long-range project or if it's a short-range project, something that would help us solve our immediate congestion, or if it's a good long-range project.
Okay, and to the woman who spoke earlier, how will you communicate to the community that it's fine to have that conversation?
We are working towards presenting a report that includes our long-range plan, our short-range plan, our policies, and a reflection of our work over the last 3 years. That will be presented to the people that we're working for, which is the City Council, the County Commissioners, and the City Council of Fair Oaks Ranch. And I would imagine that at that time, we haven't said this yet, but there will be a publication for public comment once the public has an opportunity to review, to give the opportunity to the public to review the entire document and comment on it. So we got to get to that point to where you have something logical to review. Okay. So we've taken care of the second box, and we know where we're going to go with those projects. There was a suggestion, Project 122. This is a comment that came from the crowdsource that the public offered, that they said they'd like to extend a road from Highway 46 over to 3351 that would go through George's Ranch over to Ammon Road and then to 3351. I have down, my notes reflect that we rejected that, but that project seems to be consistent with the MTP narrative that we have. So should it go in an MTP bucket, or should it come out and just be rejected?
I believe we discussed that one, and it was going to be a developer-driven project. That's what, if a property owner wants to do 122 up to a certain road, and it's allowed, and it's legal, and it's geometrically designed properly, then we said we were supporting that project. So I believe we supported this project.
Subject to the MTP?
Subject, yes, sir.
Right.
This is in the county, I believe.
Correct. This is outside the city's ETJ.
But we're considering city and county, all county projects.
We're also making a recommendation that the county adopt an MTP that would reflect our, how you do one.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is, we're saying here, what Bobby says is, he's suggesting we keep it on provided it's done by the developer, not done by anybody else.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's what we discussed before.
Okay, then we will move that to the MTP. Any objections to moving that to MTP?
Don, will you explain what MTP stands for?
Major Thoroughfare Plan.
Thank you.
And I will back up for the sake of the people who haven't followed us. The committee is very aware that several things. Number one, that new development should, to the greatest extent possible, pay its own way. They contribute a lot of traffic to the roads. Hence, they should pay as much of their fair share for the new roads to accommodate that traffic as possible. We're also aware that major thoroughfare plans may have been used in the past to designate alignments, and that some of those alignments may have been taken by other public agencies like TxDOT with the intention of acquiring that property possibly through eminent domain. The committee's position on that is that we are very much against that. We support major thoroughfare planning in that it can be a valuable and useful tool to plan the infrastructure network for a community. But it goes too far when you allow it to be a roadmap for acquiring property by eminent domain. And so there are some other restrictions in there. We suggest that major thoroughfare plans should be developed with due consideration to pieces of property that are in conservation easements or pieces of property that have very sensitive environmental problems associated with it. We also encourage the MTP adopters to make sure that you don't run these things across pieces or tracts that have been developed, whether they're developed as small residential lots like a normal city lot or whether they're large estate lots like Mrs. McCarthy has. We think that should not take place. In general, they should be limited to going across pieces of property that appear to be plausible for development or that are under development right now. And what that does is it gives the city and the county their wherewithal to cooperate with the developer of those, to have the developer build those roads in a way that they fit into the city's network. So when we say we would support this project provided it complies with the MTP provisions, it means that we wouldn't support it if they're going to go out there and then turn it over to TxDOT to be acquired through built by eminent domain. Is that good, Bryce?
Thank you.
Okay. So I believe that we're going to move that to the MTP bucket of projects. Okay.
I'm sorry to belabor this, Don, but if I understand this particular segment is outside the city of Bernie's ETJ. Is it in Fair Oaks? No.
It is. I think
part of it is in Fair Oaks ETJ.
Fair Oaks, right?
Yes, sir.
Any other remaining is contingent on the county creating a major thoroughfare plan, and then this would fit into that.
Yeah,
it's a chicken and egg situation.
Right. And there's also, I think George's Ranch, is that subject to a development agreement?
There's a water use agreement, but all the plating is through the county.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it hasn't been platted yet, or it has?
I have not seen it yet.
They're working through Unit 1, I understand.
Okay. So then if this went into the Thoroughfare Master Plan, it could potentially be a part of that platting?
If the city, it could be. If the county would adopt one, we're not even close.
I understand.
So, Bobby, I actually believe that the eastern part of George's Ranch is that San Antonio, the contested San Antonio ETJ that goes up and wraps around Fair Oaks. So I believe it's actually in San Antonio ETJ, or at least what San Antonio claims is their ETJ.
Stand by.
There's several dotted lines there. I cannot remember exactly what's.
You are correct. The city, it would be entirely, north of Ammon, it'd be San Antonio ETJ. But that section of that road that is south and east of Ammon Road, that is Fair Oaks ETJ. That, matter of fact, that dashed line that's curved, that's the ETJ line. We are obviously on the south side, meaning Fair Oaks.
Okay, are we done with that? Project 172. This is a section of Upper Valconis. Originally, my notes showed that it was rejected. There was a question about why would we reject it. I think Bobby Bailly developed a narrative for this section of Upper Valconis, and I believe that we want to move that back into a local government project.
And the narrative is up on the screen.
Yeah, so this is the crowdsourced document. I can switch to the recommendation draft.
I think it was also part of the project subcommittee list of recommendations.
Okay.
And that was referenced in the notes.
Okay, so that will be local government then. Okay. Any objection to local government for that project? Okay.
Just as a reminder, that area is the second area of high intense growth according to the BISD demographics, which is why that recommendation came out of the project subcommittee.
I believe it was crowdsourced several times from citizens. There is a section in Bear County that would need to be also improved, but
that's not our deal.
No control of that.
Okay, the last one that we need to look at is Kaufmann Road from SH 46 over to Upper Valconis. This is a roadway that is partially in the city and partially in the county, with the frontage roads on IH-10 being converted to one-way frontage roads. There's a significant increase in traffic on Kaufmann Road. This project was actually recommended by the interim committee, and I think there's been enough support for it that the county is preparing a schematic for it and looking at how we improve that and incorporate it into the transportation network. So this would go into a local government project. Any objections to that? Okay. Okay, very good. That will clean up our buckets. And that concludes item 4. Okay, Ben?
Oh, boy.
I will just say as a matter of introduction, the Trails Committee, including some members in the audience, have worked very hard to develop an aspect of transportation in Kendall County that we don't have a lot of. We have some, but not a lot. But other communities nearby and far away have found that this is a valuable recreational feature. It's also a valuable transportation feature in some cases. So they've been compelled to offer up their vision for what a trails and multi-use facility might be for Kendall County. And when I say vision, it was pretty far out there, and I suggested that they might be out running their block in a bit, and that the best way to handle this might be to let them present their vision. We would adopt it and incorporate it as an appendix, but then we would pull forward out of that appendix some of the more pragmatic recommendations and policies that could guide the first steps towards the accomplishment of that vision. So is that a fair assessment about where we are, Ben?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think by pragmatic, you're implying essentially nearer term versus longer term. Yeah. There's a tendency, and for those of you all in the audience, I don't know how much you care about this, frankly, but nonetheless, there's a tendency for cities to start to plan trails and transportation solutions for people using what's called micromobility, sort of like what Mr. Gessner was saying in his public comments, bikeability, walkability, these new micromodes of transportation that are on the horizon. There's a tendency to think about, in the States, in the United States, to think of that as an afterthought, and therefore you end up with these trail systems that are really based around recreation because they don't connect you to anything. And the idea here was to create a trail network that actually helps people that might need to utilize these other mobility options to get around, so that they can get to actual destinations, whether that's work, play, or services. That could be getting over to a medical service, for example. There are instances I've seen in Kerr County, in Kerrville in particular, as well as even out in Comfort, where there are literally elders that are riding around on these little micro-mobility scooters, and that's how they get around. And in the absence of proper safety precautions, but also proper connectivity, they're very limited in terms of what they can access. And so I'm not just trying to solve for them, but also for our youth who also have trouble getting around safely. There was a statistic that I showed during my presentation that showed that about 1% of all traffic accidents involve pedestrians, which would include people using these bikes and things, and yet they represent about 19% of the fatalities. And the reason is because we don't really design a network for them. We treat them as an afterthought. We tack them onto roads. And so subsequently, we do not have safe passage for our kids to get to school using these methods. We do not have safe passage for seniors who may have to default to these methods, or other people who are income constrained, including a senior perhaps on fixed income. So we're trying to look ahead into the future, trying to think in terms of, well, how can we be more planful? Because we do not have to make the same mistakes that, for example, San Antonio did in not anticipating this and then trying to come up with the Howard Peak Greenway, which is awesome, but it doesn't really connect. And so we're trying to create those connections. So I don't know how detailed you want me to go as far as this write-up of a report, but do you want me to talk?
Why don't we, I mean, it was distributed, Northern sent it out to everybody. There is a package at your place there. It's titled Alternative Transportation. The first 3 sheets are not the appendix, but after that, the document after that's titled Multi-Use Trail Infrastructure, A Vision for Modern Mobility in Kendall County. From there on is what's being proposed as the appendices.
That's correct.
So let's start with who's read what was distributed.
All right.
Okay. All right. Have you read it sufficiently to offer comments or suggestions that it be adopted intact? Or, frankly, this is one of the inclusion. This is one of the reasons that we're moving into October. September. That's all right. Just the easy, Bryce. Not with our meeting.
I do have one comment, and it's a very small one, but the pedestrian suggestions around HERF and ESSER, I'd like you to take tunnels out of there.
Okay.
I just don't envision a tunnel as part of the options for pedestrians. But
I can be comfortable with that. I mean, so we were just trying to find how could we connect the old number 9 railroad to City Park in the most cost-efficient way with the greatest safety. And tunneling might be a solution, especially as we see the Boring Company come online with some of their more efficient solutions.
I just wonder about the location in a floodplain.
I agree with that, too, actually.
But you know, the Fry Street project as a pedestrian project actually can help us solve to that pedestrian.
That whole neighborhood could just walk to the duck, right?
Yep.
Lots of things have been decided.
You're saying sort of swing it around or what have you. Well, I mean, so you want to remove that or?
The tunneling?
A suggestion might be to put a lower level walkway. Because if we do some overpasses for vehicular, it lends itself to do lower level walkways down at the water.
I can live with that.
A lower encapsulated, no, I'm kidding.
Where was it? Where was it, Bitsy?
Where was it? It was kind of in the beginning.
I didn't paginate for this because of the.
Okay.
Well, you really don't want tunnels on pedestrians for their safety.
Yeah,
that's a bad thing to do, is be underground and.
Okay, there is a section titled Connecting Old Number 9 to City Park.
Okay.
And I think what I'm hearing is you just want it, you just don't want a tunnel.
A reference.
And you just want a safe connection.
That's right.
Do you think we can find, does the committee think we can find a reasonable compromise language that we can move forward? I believe we can.
I think Gary offered a lower level walkway that makes good sense to me. The other thing that I wanted to just simply observe is the recommendation. I'm sorry.
Close to the microphone. Close to the microphone. There you go.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask that we do is when we get to the recommendations to align them with their priority. I think we initially talked about the safe paths to schools within a 2-mile perimeter around each of our schools and connecting to the neighborhoods that school serves. That, to me, is one of the short-term goals that came out of the project subcommittee and is consistent with one of your policy recommendations, but it is number 2. So I think once we get to policy alignments, maybe we can put them in order of importance.
So you would say that safe routes to school becomes number 1?
In my mind, it does.
Okay. To me, that's fine. It's not
And because of that, I guess then my concern previously to this document was we didn't have the short and the long term. Does that mean we are going to have a short-term bucket and a long-term bucket?
We haven't really established it. I think what we talked about initially was that our short term was to emphasize the safe routes to school. That was our short term. Long term are these bigger trail concepts. And I think one of the more desired ones is a connection between Fair Oaks Ranch and the city of Bernie.
Well,
1 moment.
Was one of the more desired ones. Yeah.
I would suggest then, if you're not going to have an entire mirror image of the Transportation Committee, short-term and long-term, that you address it in the path forward. Maybe number 4 could be communicating, because I know I've heard this called a plan twice already. This is not the plan, this is the vision. So we don't want to give the county or anybody else an out of saying, oh, we have a plan, we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I've read through this, and I don't have a problem with any of the suggestions so far. What I see is that we would pull some of these policies out of recommended policy, and that we would move those up into the body of the report, and those would become short-term goals.
Bingo. Yes.
And if we need to translate some of these into projects, we can. I think most of these policies pretty well stand on their own. And we may need to say something like, do a study for this project, or do that. But we'll get into that when we get into the body of that part of the report. But I see these being intact, the vision.
Particularly the policy statements. That's the ask anyway, right? So would that be carried forward, or most of them will be carried forward?
Well, we'd look and see which ones.
Got it. Okay.
There are some that are redundant because they're
already in the correct.
Yeah, exactly.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So
I did offer to help mold those, and I hadn't gotten a call yet, so I can help.
If you look on the screen, I mapped this up for 3 of the schools for the pedestrian, just to see what you're talking about, pulling some of them out as priority. This is a 1-mile circle around Bernie High School, and it is some of the pedestrian issues that were identified within 1 mile of Bernie High School. And I did 1 mile, 1 mile instead of 2 because I have a kid. So, and I believe the safe routes to school, it does have certain distances that they feel like elementary school, middle school, and high school children will be willing to walk or bike. And I think a mile was kind of an average.
Should be willing to walk.
Should be willing, but it's also Texas.
Well, I think there's also a bus policy.
Right.
I think kids that live within 2 miles of a school are not allowed on buses.
Right.
And therefore need to make their own way to schools or have parents drop off, which then adds to the access and egress around the schools with more and more cars for parents dropping off.
We're given a special waiver.
If this is something that you want to go forward with, I just need a nod. Okay.
I think so, but that would be in the body of the report. What we're really looking at now is, do we adopt this as an intact policy in the appendices?
I have a question.
Gary.
So on the first 3 pages, there seemed somewhat of a disconnect to the overall vision. About,
first 3 pages being?
I'm sorry, this document that was left at our...
He's talking about alternate transportation and then multi-trail use.
Those, I believe, are
We go into the body of the report?
That or some version of that, I believe.
Well,
I question why we have all of a sudden jumped to bus and trolley concepts. Because I know we talked about it for maybe a total of 3 minutes over the last 3 years. And why all of a sudden it jumps into this report. Because I'm not sure at what point you talked about it in your trails subcommittee.
Right. So it came up in our Trails Subcommittee. It also came up in the Policy Subcommittee a number of times, and it was, but it never really made it here because we were so focused on discussions about eminent domain and these sort of major fixes that, and then our timeline becomes significantly constricted. So then some of us were talking about, well, somebody just needs to put their foot forward and offer something that can be, of course, it's a draft, so editable, to put forth that realistically
I would suggest Transportation Committee .2 would pick up public transportation, but I'm not sure that it has a place considering our deliberations since 2019. It's just not been a topic we've discussed, so I'd hate to just throw that out. And
well, I'll just give you my view on that, and by no means is it what everybody needs to do. But with regard to public transportation, if this committee is silent on public transportation, I think we do ourselves a disservice. We already have public transportation in this community. It's called Alamo Regional Transit. Hardly anybody uses it, but a few people do use it, and it's really good. It's the only way they got to get to their doctor appointments. Now, why it's not more widely used, maybe one of our recommendations could be like, well, let's study why it's not more widely used and what we can do to improve the service and use it. Another thing that we could look at is say, is it possible, maybe somebody could study, is there a way for VIA to provide service to Bernie? I mean, they're coming already this side of Flagstop.
Alamo Colleges.
Colleges. Is it possible that we can contract with? That's a good pragmatic first step. So I think it needs to go in the body of the report. And we got to say something, but we can't just be silent on it.
Well, at the same time, we just can't put a map in there.
No.
Without some sort of narrative that Bobby may want to write.
No, I think we are.
With that said, that's just my position on that, because we've just not discussed it. And whether it's in or out of the report, we just need to.
I guess you could say what I'm trying to do is catalyze that discussion, and you're playing right into it, man.
Mr. Chair.
And then one last thing.
Yes,
Bobby
sorry.
mentioned the third page from the end that's titled The Path Forward. Should that come up to be included in the overall report as opposed to being at the back of the appendix?
I don't see it that way.
So we're talking about this part right here?
No.
The path forward, which
the
is
path forward.
the 3 items that a fourth may be a short enough. I envision that coming into that. My comment was, Gary, was along, and if I may respond to your concern for this section, I remember discussion on mass transit, buses, Main Street, etc. Whatever it was, our table of contents of our report has always included, I want to say section 7 or 8, that was alternative transportation. And then we decided to do the trails section, which was its own section or its own chapter, if I may call it that. So I thought when I saw this that these front 2 pages would be part of that chapter. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but there was a title for a section of our document that said alternative transportation. So that's where I figured that would be. Whether we put the map in it and some other policy policy statements, I think there are already policy statements that address our desire to not forget about public transportation and to look at opportunities for federal state funding. There are some in there. And lastly, the path forward could be part of just your trail section. The policy statements could be part of the general documents policy statements section. Did y'all get that?
Yeah.
Gary, did? Okay, thank you.
John, you were trying to say something.
Yeah, I was looking at these first 3 pages on the alternative transportation and looking on the bus and trolley concept. Of course, right now, we can't justify a mass transit system up here, but I think it would be to our benefit to look around like you've got the new Alamo College down there and try to get a handle on what it would take if you had some sort of a mass transportation. In other words, you've got to have a destination density. In other words, like on most malls, you've got an anchor store. Well, you've got to have some reason to have a mass transit system to go from here to there to there. Now, it may come to the point where the public transportation here in Bernie would be individual units. It would be like vans or something like that maybe would run every 2 hours out to the college or something like that. But you need to get ahead of this and figure out what does it cost to have these different systems so that when you can identify users, you have some idea of what it's going to cost, and is it realistic to even talk about that? Mm-hmm. So on here, where it shows, like a bus line all the way from North Bernie to the county line, well, probably that's not going to happen anytime soon, but you ought to have some idea of what it would cost to do some segments of that and plan ahead. So in other words, you got some idea when you're faced with moving people around, what it costs and how you would do it. So I think that ought to be part of this study.
There's an opportunity under the mobility hubs to address that issue, because you're talking about a mobility hub as sort of the intersection between micro mobility and macro. And then there's also a comment in that section about connecting up with the community college there at Valconis Creek intersection, whatever they call that.
Mm-hmm. The Alamo Area Community College's
Yes.
via station, whatever that's going to be. So I agree with you, John. And I was also, it kind of gets into that, just like how the trails piece has a next steps, perhaps there ought to be the next steps that's prescribed for assessing public transportation.
Well, like, not SAWS, but via transit, they have a whole group of vans that they send out for individuals. Well, we could have that here in Bernie. That would be more cost effective than trying to have a bus line that runs every 15 minutes and nobody rides it.
Right.
So if you had it where it's on call, it could still be a public transportation, but it would be on call, and you could maximize the use of the vans and minimize the outlay.
Right, the microbus concept.
Yeah.
Yep, I understand. I'm wide open-minded. I'm really stimulating these considerations. This was my goal, and I love it.
All right, let's do a little tactical democracy here. Take the first 3 pages of this and rip them off, okay? What you're left with is a document that says multi-use trail infrastructure. What I've heard is general support for this with a couple of modifications and changes, that we would incorporate this as an appendix.
Looking for a motion?
Well,
I'm supportive.
Which one is this at the appendix?
Yes. And that we would take some extracts of this and incorporate it into the body of the report, either somewhere or as policies or projects or something like that.
Yes, sir.
And you'll have a shot when we go through those reports to take your shots at it then and expand and propose changes to it and things like that.
Well, I think the last time we talked about it, the last meeting, is that we did not want specific lines. We wanted verbiage saying that ideally we need so-and-so.
Right.
Without any alignment, because we're going to have the same problem the textile had. You put lines on things, well, people are going to say, that goes across my property, I don't want it. So it needs to be verbalized that this is what the goals are without actual lines on the map.
Yeah, John, the document that was sent out accomplished just what we asked them to do. There's no lines, there's
Yeah, you're talking
major
about the
wide
numbers.
arrows that we talked about last time from one area to the other. So the report reflects our discussion from last meeting.
So given that, is there any objection to adopting this as appendix, and it would be Appendix E?
No objection.
No objections.
No, with the modifications you're going to make, that's fine.
With the modifications. And you got the modifications, right?
I only have a handful. I don't know if it accounts for everybody's
No,
recommendations.
I think the
Yeah.
only modification I really heard to this was
Troublemaker.
Bitsy's tunnel.
Mhm. And then we'll play around with the order, if you like, of the.
Yeah, I was thinking of concentric circles in a sense, you know, where we have schools as being the bullseye, and then we have connecting to,
Not order, concentric circles? Oh,
I literally have a GIS map of all the concentric circles, and then I actually like the northern pared it down because it's based off of the 2 miles. But if
Yeah.
we play with 1 mile, what you'll see is the entire city is covered with, in terms of that needs to be safe route.
And you would communicate that on the path forward number 4? Is that, or somewhere? I mean, it's got to be somewhere, so, because it's not a policy statement. That's what
Well, the safe routes piece is a policy statement because that says every 2 miles. But are you suggesting you'd like me to do concentric circles with, something like what Northern created?
I believe those are short-term projects that will go
short-term.
into the-
Those are the short-term.
And I can tell you just from a visual standpoint, if you expand it to a 2-mile circle, you lose the detail
Yes.
about the area that you're referencing.
Especially the ones that came in from the general public.
And also, our schools are so close together.
Get some overlap?
Yeah.
Would there be a recommendation to create a version for that per school? I mean,
That's what my idea was, but I only did 3 because I would.
She only worked till 10 o'clock last night
I only
on
worked
this.
till 10 o'clock.
I like that suggestion a lot because it visualizes it, and it brings in a lot of your committee's work as the
Right.
backbone.
Okay, I didn't hear any objection to
I
this.
mean, that's
So I'm going to consider that this is adopted by consensus. Any objection to that? Okay, it's adopted. For the audience's edification, the committee made a decision early in the process to make decisions by consensus, and that means that we keep talking until everybody believes that their voice has been adequately heard and it's time to make a decision and move on, and that they may not like or they may not be completely opposed to what's being adopted, but they can live with it. And that's one reason it takes a while, but I think you can see that we're making some progress here, and I feel good about where we're headed. So thanks to the Committee on Trails and Multi-Use Infrastructure. If you'll make those changes and get them back to me, we'll get them plugged into the report.
Yeah.
make Rich Senna come up here and.
Rich Senna, did your clock stop or?
Sorry, I had another meeting. Here you go.
Apologize.
Okay. It is 3:15. What I'd like to do is introduce the first 2 buckets of plans without starting the selection. So I'll ask you to go back to those tables with the green bars on it. Everybody there? And you'll see the first sheet there. It's titled Major Thoroughfare Plan Projects. In going through all of the, how many was it, Northern? 120 or something like that. There was a logical grouping. These are projects that basically fell on the city's major thoroughfare plan, or they were part of a development that was underway and included a major thoroughfare plan. And so we have a whole section in the report. I detailed those qualifications about how we would support a major thoroughfare plan project if it met certain conditions. And what I'm suggesting is, these are all of them that are on the major thoroughfare plan. And that we say those ones that are within projects that are underway. I'm talking about like Copperfield and I guess Regent Boulevard. Are the major thoroughfares out there completely done?
There's a little bit more left to do at Regent.
But those that are within an existing development, where the developer is clearly going to be responsible for building that, we would include those major thoroughfare plan components as part of our short-range program. And that those that are not part of a major development or something that's underway, and here I'm talking about the HERF tract east of Adler Road, where it's vacant property right now. The owners testified that it's not their intent to develop that property. They don't mind us showing the major thoroughfare going through there, but we're not advocating that that project be done anytime soon. So those kinds of projects we would put on the long-range plan, so that if that ever did develop, it would be done by the developer. So if you take just a minute and go down through those 12 or 16 projects and see if you have any concerns about whether they're long or short, or whether they even ought to be on the major thoroughfare plan bucket, I think we can begin to move forward.
So can you refresh my memory about the policy decision that we made about greenfield roads? It seems like a lot of these are greenfield roads, and I'd like them to be consistent within our policy recommendations.
Well, my understanding is the committee did not have a problem with greenfield roads, provided it was the developer doing his own greenfield. I mean, it was, it's not
within the development.
Within the development, right.
So can we go through these several to find out if they rise to that standard?
Sure.
For example, the number 27A and 27B,
Right.
Copper Creek to Cascade Caverns.
27A that's the extension of Copper Creek south to the Cibolo Creek, or to their south boundary line.
And that is within a...
That's within a development. That would be a short-range project.
So looking at the sheet, and this is the first time I've seen it, but looking at the sheet, 18, 19, and 27A are in existing developments that are ongoing right now.
All right, 18, 19, 27A and B.
No, not B.
27A.
Not B.
But even 18 is not, my statement wasn't correct. 18 only goes partially, it doesn't go all the way to Upper Valconis. So if we broke 18 into an A and B, part of it would be in Regent Park, but another part is a different landowner.
Okay.
It's just like Copper Creek is A and B.
And what about 28? That's constructing a new road from SH 46 to Spring Creek.
Yeah, I guess that's along the north part of, it goes all the way across to 474. I think it's in the major thoroughfare plan. Is that right, Jeff?
We have an alignment, something like
right.
that.
But
its alignment follows the south property line of a long strip of property.
But there's no development plans, and my understanding is that some of those projects are maybe conservation easements.
Well, and Skip just spoke to us about his property, which is in that area.
Right.
And is not under development and with concerns. I have a problem with this one being even in long, but I'm also a resident of Spring Creek Road. So that's my opinion. I don't have to take a vote on it.
Well, the dilemma that the committee came up with is like, okay, well, we're comfortable with being there, and we don't think it's ever going to develop. The landowner said it's not going to develop, but the sad fact is none of us live forever, and sometimes our kids don't do, if our grandkids don't do what we want them to do with the property.
Okay.
And so this would preserve the right or the ability of the city to coordinate or require the developer coordinate with them if it ever developed. But as long as it was in private hands and not subject to development, it just stays as it is.
Okay.
So going back to Mitzi's earlier comment about making sure that we're applying our own policies, that Adler Road, 474 to Esperanza, of course, we know that landowner, you said yourself that they're not interested in development at this point. They've indicated as much, but they've also put it in a conservation easement. And so it becomes a question about how does that get applied in that context? Because I know the city really wants it, and I know it therefore it probably finds itself being foisted back on here, but at the same time, when do we draw that distinction as a committee?
It depends if the conservation easement gets carried over with the new property owner that wants to develop it.
It does. It's
and they can keep it. They can eliminate it.
No, you can't eliminate a conservation easement. You've given up the development rights.
Well, you've negotiated the extent of your development rights.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So if they've negotiated the possibility of the road extension in there, it could be done.
Sure.
But, and I don't think we can anticipate each and every situation that exists, but we can give some reasonable guidance. I personally don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But,
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So again, we're saying major thoroughfare plan, not eminent domain, not a taking of any sort.
Right.
Is what we're hearing. Okay. And then I look at this number 27A and 27B again, and of course, basically what it's saying is connect across Cibolo Creek from Cooper Creek to Cascade Caverns Road. Is that true? It's kind of confusing because it's south of Shield Road.
I think that was where John had suggested it connect.
Right.
But that's, again, the Pfeiffer property. Mr. Pfeiffer and his family have said they ain't never going to develop it, so it ain't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think my concern is still the concern I had a few weeks ago was if we put these on any report or any map, we're in this meeting, we know what we're saying right now about these, about an eminent domain, about it never developing, but eventually it just becomes part of a report. And by leaving it on a report, we do not afford the city of Bernie the opportunity to find alternate routes because we've given them a solution here. That's never going to happen. So why would we stick with that?
That one is in there. And in the report it says this is the last remaining viable alternative to make a road through there. But it comes with two big problems. One is really environmental sensitivity that we don't even know if can be addressed. And secondly, the landowner, 2 generations have said they don't want it running through there. So the dilemma again that presents itself is that environmental sensitivity cuts both ways. As Jonah mentioned a couple of times, I'm sitting here thinking, and if the landowner does decide to sell and there's no major thoroughfare on there, that could all just be houses. And where would we be then? We'd have more houses, just as much environmental degradation, maybe more, and we didn't even have an opportunity to solve any transportation challenges. And so if you at least got that alternative there, it really places the ball squarely in the landowner's court, and he's in control.
I get that logic, and I really, really do. So I'm not trying to refute that logic at all. When I'm looking at these specific examples and playing it out of my mind, I'm running into the environmental impacts. I'm running into the other landowner factors, and so I'm just trying to game this out. How does that play out? So.
Well, I have suggested an alternative approach in the report that we have not vetted yet. But basically it would involve the landowner allowing the city to really do a serious job of doing environmental study to see whether it can be done at all. And if it can't be done, part of the negotiation in allowing it to be done would be if it can't be done, then the city will give it up and it won't be on a major thoroughfare plan for 100 years. And if it can be done, and the developer doesn't want it, or says, well, if we ever do it, it's going to look this way, they can negotiate that. Again, at some point, if there's nothing said about it, there is nothing that prevents somebody from invoking eminent domain if the traffic gets bad enough. So there's a way for them to cooperate. Whether they will negotiate and cooperate really is up to both parties. But it is a dilemma. I've written an article about in the paper. I think everybody understands it's a dilemma. Sometimes it just ain't no good answers.
This is one of those.
Yeah.
This is one of those. I like Ben, I understand the necessity from a governmental perspective. It just still irks so many people to have these lines with no vetting. So would that then put us in a position to have to create some criteria for the quality of the environmental investigation? Is there?
That'd be difficult.
Yeah,
Very difficult. That'd be very, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Betsy.
No, I mean, I'm asking the question.
Well, I think those are all great questions, and I've struggled with those. I mean, this is the only one that's like that we've said, we can't really answer. And so maybe we shouldn't put it in either bucket. Maybe we ought to just say, we really need to think about this more.
So but we've vetted, if I may, we've vetted very similar roadway projects, or even let's say sidewalk projects. We went from the big concepts, from lines to curved lines and swaths and such, but there are some really smart connectivity sidewalks or trails that make a lot of sense from neighborhood to neighborhood. There's going to be objection to who's walking by my house, but there's no other way to communicate it unless we could say from this or through this neighborhood to that neighborhood. You can do it in a narrative, but this whole committee, every month, we've been taking one project at a time and trying to not define it, but some you do have to go down to a little more definition, and that this is one of them.
So the other thing that we haven't talked about is we have discussed no lines on maps. The major thoroughfare plan draws lines on maps. It's impacting folks. Whether we like it or not, it's impacting folks. It's impacting it in good ways and bad ways, probably. Raises property values, lowers property values. We have the possibility to say pieces of property outside the city, if they develop, then we need these kinds of roads, and they need to connect to other pieces of property without drawing lines. That doesn't happen in the transportation world. I know, we've looked it up. Jeff's looked it up. We've talked about it. Why can't it exist in the world? What's the problem? We did it with the trails. We drew big old loopity-loop arrows. Why can't we just say, if this ever develops, it needs to have these size roads and they need to connect north, south, east, west this way, period, and not draw lines on a map? Is that possible?
I think it's a great idea, but there's probably a reason why it doesn't exist. I mean, is there some understanding of that from the transportation?
I believe it. Go ahead, Jeff.
So Bryce has asked this question previously, and we've done some research and reached out to many cities across the state and consultants that have looked nationwide, trying to find some sort of thoroughfare plan that's not lines on the map. And we haven't been able to find any that exist, but we're still researching that. I know it all happens, and as we've talked multiple times, these lines are there for when a development does occur. The part that I see is if it is kind of a gray, wide swath line, then when that development happens, they're going to say, well, I'm not going to do it. It's not not on my property. And then this one, it's not on my property either. So it's going to, developers will be able to say it's not on their property itself, unless we just put every property has to have a roadway connection.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer. I think it may be good for now, but, maybe the thing
When
is.
it comes down to it, like a great example is Earth subdivision. There's a light there. There's empty property across the street from there. That street, if that property across the street gets developed, is going to go straight across. We know that. We know that. Do we have to put it on a map? That's what I'm saying. Like, there's obvious, levels where we have an opportunity to say, do something different instead of us. That's why we're meeting. That's why this committee started, because of lines on a map.
Okay.
For 3 years.
For the sake of making our big step into a baby step, can I suggest, other than that 27B, are there any objections to adopting these as a major thoroughfare plan projects in the long or short buckets?
No objection.
Maybe we pull 27B out as a special project.
Don, could you remind me when we went through the list of 10,000 projects, was there any projects on the City of Bernie's major thoroughfare plan that we stated out loud we objected to?
I know.
There isn't one over there.
Not one over there.
I don't believe so. There are parts of their major thoroughfare plan where there weren't committee or crowdsourced suggestions, I think, but I don't think we objected to any.
So I do have a question about 121, which is Champion Boulevard extended north to the future Adler extension.
Champion Boulevard.
It's listed as a short term, but I thought we were talking about, is that the HERF property?
I believe that is, Jeff, is that in Esperanza or?
It's recently sold. There's a parcel between Bentwood and Esperanza that's 80% floodplain. There's a big rectangular property that's directly north of Champion, and from that property, then it hits the drought property.
So I thought we were going to put the drought HERF property in a long-term bucket, considering that they were not interested in developing. They were okay with the line on the map.
That needs to change, that's fine. That was a misunderstanding on my part. Is that more a long-term project, Jeff?
I think it would make a lot of sense to have that at the same time as the Adler piece. Those two pieces go together.
Good point.
And
I have a question about 67, the Greenfield Road along the transmission line. Are we talking about the power lines or the gas transmission line?
Power line is what I think the suggestion was.
I think that one, did we get rid of that one?
I thought we said no to that one.
We rejected it?
I thought we did too. But then the way this is written, we're talking about from 46 to north of Esperanza, and I think the discussion that we had was also HERF property transmission lines.
Yeah, I've got that one as the do not include.
So that's a rejected?
Yeah.
And the purpose for rejection was?
Yes.
She grit her teeth.
I don't remember. I want to say it was space, or you would have to move the power line or something like that. I cannot remember. It was something, there were conflicting infrastructures.
All right. We will move that one to rejected.
What was that number?
67.
67.
67.
That's the one that goes around Esperanza.
Northern, can you show the map picture for 67, just to make sure we're all.
Yeah, this is the one that goes across Malakoff.
That's right.
Yeah. No, we said no to that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. We said no to that.
That's a no.
That's a no.
That's a no.
Caused a lot of concern.
Okay. And the reason is cultural?
Cultural.
Okay.
And just, everything is all over the property.
Right.
Is my editorial opinion.
Okay.
Not only that is we didn't think there was a congestion being solved by that.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
I should have said that.
Okay, anything else?
Well, why are we considering 28 or 166? I'm confused as to why we would be considering those.
Because I believe that's where 166,
See, those are both of them I thought we had said no to. And yet it appears again, so.
they're on the major thoroughfare plan, are they, Jeff, or not?
Can we see them one at a time?
Yeah, can we see the pictures?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That was a no, it did not solve congestion.
166?
166, we said did not solve
Yeah,
congestion.
that was on the second pass. We got rid of it on the second pass.
Okay.
It's still been eliminated, right?
What about 28 Northern?
Is that it?
That's a do not include too?
Yeah.
That's the Malakoff, that was,
The other end.
Yeah, we know
That one pushed kind of the same thing as the Fry, I think it was. It pushed traffic into a subdivision, a dead-end subdivision, just complete different traffic type and pattern.
And it didn't solve any congestion.
And it didn't solve congestion, yeah.
okay.
Because of that, can we see 37, 38, and 42 just go down the list?
Yep. 38.
I think 37 was pretty clear, that was,
Okay, that's not-
School has always been in it.
Should have worn glasses.
I'm sorry?
I needed glasses.
Oh.
I just moved it further away from
wait,
me.
you're looking at crowdsource,
Ah.
38, should be committee source.
Gotcha.
Ah.
But you're looking at your numbers, correct?
Committee source 38.
Is that right, Northern?
I think so.
Okay, so that's, the numbers that are on this are the old numbers,
Yeah, I just have to find
Yep.
it, 38.
the ID numbers.
I've only got 6 tables here, so it just takes me a minute. That one. Johns Road.
That is,
Spence Ranch.
It's 38.
that's 38, yeah.
Mhm.
That doesn't look like the map. I'm not sure.
So the portion of Spencer Ranch where it's kind of the gray area that says site, so there's an ongoing development by the name of Spencer Ranch, and they're actually building that road today in that gray area from Highway 46 to that where the red line kind of starts.
Oh, I see where, okay.
So that does follow the City of Bernie's major thoroughfare plan.
So that remains as short?
Yes. Well, I guess part of it would be short, huh? Is that right?
Again, a developer is building a portion of it right now.
But the part up to Johns Road is still, okay.
Once that road's built, we'll open up the door to the next property, we'll see.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I can
What
show
else?
you what I created for that particular.
So the only ones we, So the only ones we haven't done on the first page would be 121 and 126.
42?
I'm sorry, 126 and 150, in terms of just taking another fresh look at it.
Did we look at 42, Betsy?
No, we did not.
42 crowdsourced.
Are y'all willing to spend a little time to go through those? I'd like to get
We
to
need
some.
to.
I would.
We need to, yeah.
I mean, we could at least complete the first
Yeah,
page.
let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to see the difference. 38 and 126 in my mind are the same.
Good point. 38, yeah.
It says that on the spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking about taking that off in deference to 126. You looking at crowdsource number 42?
Yes.
Okay.
That was at least a trail project, but proposed pedestrian connectivity project on the trail.
Well, we're talking about this as a major thoroughfare plan. Is that on the MTP?
That is true, I know that.
So the major thoroughfare plan shows Champion Boulevard extending north. It doesn't make this connection, but it would extend north up to the Ammon extension, but it would, where it says Bentwood Drive on the picture there, it would connect to where Bentwood Drive is. So it's connecting the two neighborhoods just at a slightly different location than what's that.
So you said Ammon, but did you mean Adler?
Adler, sorry,
Yeah.
you're correct, sorry.
Mhm.
Adler.
Good point.
And that was the triangular property that you just mentioned earlier.
Correct.
That was
Correct.
in transaction.
Correct.
And so this is, I can show you on the screen, this is the draft that I have for, I believe that's the correct one.
For vehicular project, a vehicular project,
Mhm.
a roadway. And as long as there's a neighborhood traffic plan or neighborhood traffic study done, I don't think there'd be a whole lot of cut-through traffic because you have to go through it's a large neighborhood connecting to a large neighborhood. So I think it'd benefit both large neighborhoods, but I'm just looking at that. I don't know the type of
There's
traffic.
a school at the back of that other neighborhood, so that's what y'all had talked about.
Thus the study
That's
may,
not this one. That's
There's this.
high school, isn't it?
Perf. Is
High
there?
school
Right there.
high school.
Perf right
So the study may say, Bryce, the study may say you don't connect to the north until, you don't connect
To the Adler extension?
to Adler unless it's, well, that we're not going to solve it here. That's what I'm saying, is it needs to be studied and shown there's no negative impact on one or the other neighborhood. Pedestrianized, it'd be great. I think
well, there already is a pedestrian connection.
there is a connection.
Oh, yeah, you can walk from one neighborhood to the other.
Where the gate is.
Where the gate is. Well, the gate's not there anymore, really. I mean, there's a small thing, but you can walk right through.
Mm-hmm.
I think both neighborhoods, it gets back to the connectivity issue. I don't think either neighborhood would be happy with this because the folks in Champion Heights are concerned that their neighborhood would be used as a shortcut
Cut through
from
the high
46 to get to Bernie High School, and the folks in Bentwood feel the same way. Now, there was some discussion of emergency vehicles needing more ways to get access to Champion Heights particularly, because there's a lot of ways to get into Bentwood. So the question then becomes, do you use it for EMS purposes only? I mean, that's the question.
Or do you use it only if you have connection northward and you don't have to cut through that neighborhood? That's what I'm saying. We don't know. I think it needs to be studied.
And I would comment the Champion neighborhood was specifically built with this connection in mind. If you go out there, you'll notice there's no driveways on any of those houses that front Champion Boulevard. I mean, this was a planned connection.
Interesting.
Are you talking 121 or are you talking 42?
The picture here.
This is both. If you look on the screen, this is the draft recommendation. You see supported by crowdsourcing comments reference. So this is 141, 42, 16, 43, and 117.
And we talked, correct.
Combined into one recommendation.
It solves one purpose, so it's all in one.
I stand corrected. I thought it was further to the left where
You thought it was this
Deer
one?
Creek crosses Vista Verde. That's what I
That's a
was.
different-
I got
that's a different one.
confused.
Negative, yeah.
Sorry about that.
So are we in or out?
I say with the proper study, we keep it in, and whether it's, at least they need to consider at least pedestrian activity, even further north.
I agree with that.
And is it long or short?
As it develops, I would say, right? Because we're assuming this section right here in the middle is sold?
It's floodplain, isn't it?
We understand someone purchased it recently. It's 27 acres. I believe someone purchased recently to build one house.
Because that's all that fits with the floodplain?
Yes,
That's
it's
going to be an
about-
interesting conversation.
It's about 80% floodplain, correct?
So you use 20% per house.
Well, this sounds like it might have to go to the Trails Committee.
I swear every project that we can't figure out what.
Yeah, right. Throw it to me. Thanks.
It sounds like it
We
needs
will
to
take
be,
it. Our committee will make the
if
decision.
it's quickly developing, sounds like it needs to be short. I'll stick that out there.
I think it's a great place for a trail. It reminds me of the Curry Creek Trail.
It's right there on Brown Creek.
Well, lucky for you, I also have it on the trail map.
Correct.
That's what I was referring to, yes.
I'm not sure. I think we're on 42.
If it's short on the trail list, it needs to be short on the roadway, because you need to look at them both at the same time. Don't talk to the
Well-
neighbors, talk to the residents all at one time about both. So I would suggest we keep it on the short list as presented, but instead of a separate project, but keep, what number was that, Northern?
It's 42.
Is it 42? The one, the big one.
On map.
The all-encompassing, because it's all one problem, is what we're hearing from the people. That one.
This picture is combining several of the numbers.
Yes. And so, and it's the same problem.
So it's 42 and 121, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so we can add those together. Okay, so both of those are
Short.
short.
And they were short here anyway.
Okay. So that leaves us 126 and 150. 126, I thought we talked about, that's the same as number 38.
Correct.
So we'll combine those two. Are you all okay with that? Okay.
This is the draft I have for 126.
Yeah.
Well, Don, one is a short-term recommendation, and the other is a long-term.
Well, and there probably will be an A and a B, the short term being the one that's within a development, and the B being anything that's outside of that.
I would propose we offer it up as a short project as Northern has it drawn up here. It tells the story. It doesn't commit to any one
Anybody
alignment.
objecting to short? Okay, it's short. Project 150, which is Winding Woods, extended Champion Boulevard. I think this is one that's parallel to 46. That is on the major thoroughfare.
Correct.
And it is a short-term project. I mean, I heard you had conversations with those guys, right?
Correct. So the recently Embry development is going to build a portion of that, as well as Embry, Talking Trails, Embry is going to dedicate a portion of the floodplain and going to put a trail in us there as well.
Okay, so as a matter of review, we have rejected 28, 67, and 166. We've accepted everything else except project 27B, which will leave us a special project for now.
As a special project. Long-term special project or short?
We don't know yet.
Special.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. Any objection to that?
No objection.
Okay, thank you for your hard work. I think we need to move on to, we will cover we'll pick up at the TxDOT projects at the next meeting, which I believe will be easier than this was. Okay, now for the time that everybody's been anxiously waiting for. We have about 7 or 8 people here that would like to talk. If you'd like to fill out a comment card, we're welcome to take your comments at this time. First one up, Adalia M. Clark.
Thank you. I've only lived in Bernie for the last 17 years, so I'm not privy to a lot of what went on in the years before then. But from what I've read and from what I understand, this idea that we've been calling the Gateway Loop surfaced in 1974. In 1974, 48 years ago, Bernie was very different from what it is today. So the Bernie of 1974 cannot possibly have much in common with the Bernie of 2022, and yet the same project keeps coming back again and again and again, like a vampire. It looks dead and then it comes back. It looks dead and then it comes back. And at least for me, some of the mystery or the paranoia that comes from this project is the idea that who was going to benefit or what was the purpose or the viability of it in 74 compared to what the purpose and viability of it is in 2022. They're apples and oranges, but it's the same, in my understanding, it's the same loop in the same place, coming back again and again and again. So I think the only way to make that go away, if in fact it is a dead issue, is to have the committee make a very formal statement and then maybe not rely on your agenda or your website to put that idea forward, but maybe put it in the form of a mailing or something where people who don't get online or people who aren't on social media, and I'm not one of them, where people would have access to facts and reality and not just rumors. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Maybe we could have a funeral.
What?
A funeral. Okay, next up is David Lichterman. Did I say that right?
You did good.
Okay.
Well, you know my name, and I'll start off with just a quick solution item. On Herf Road, if you'd like to solve some of the traffic issues there, if you make both lanes right turns and or left turns that are the turn lanes, so if you're heading towards the gas station from south to north, make them both right turns. That'll alleviate the flow. I do it. I mean, I just make the right turn from the left lane. I know it's illegal, but it makes sense because there's nobody there. There's nobody in the middle lane.
All you lawyers, don't listen.
Whatever. Come find me.
Recorded.
It's okay. And, this, I'm here because I saw a line on a map, and it runs really close to my house. That's the personal reason. I have a wife and 2 little kids, and I speak for a lot of other people my age or usually younger with kids as young as I have them. And, the reason I moved to Bernie is because, it's got a rural feel, and it's a small town. And all this talk about elevated bypasses or non-elevated bypasses and loops, and whether they ran by my house or not, I ran away from a town that went through the same growing pains. It's doing it right now. I moved here from Bozeman, or close by Bozeman, and they've destroyed that place. I mean, it's a mess. It's growing leaps and bounds. Its population's going to double in 10 years. It's already went up about 25% in the 7 years I lived there, and it'll double, and it has ruined the place. It has taken a place from a majestic place like Bernie to a place you don't want to be anymore. It's overcrowded, and I think if you came up with some AAA rated bonds for buying a whole bunch of this land and putting it in perpetuity into conservation easements and slowing the growth, slow it down. Progress does not have to mean growth. I mean, population growth. It doesn't have to mean that. And I realize you've been working at a job for years now, trying to solve like all of these really complex maze types problems. And maybe the problem is that you're trying to solve the wrong problem. The problem is all of this growth, it's not necessarily good. So put a hold to it. Stop it. Turn around. Make a new decision. Slow things down. Put it in really ironclad recommendations and keep our town. I'm only here for 2 years, but I got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'd like to see them grow up here. And I hope they could grow up in a place that I'd really like to be in. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lichtman. I would tell you that Monday, in all likelihood, at Commissioners Court, there will be an item on the agenda to consider doing exactly what you said. An agenda hasn't been published yet, but you may want to review that agenda once it comes out on Thursday and contact your county commissioner and let them know how you feel about whether the public should have a right to vote on that proposition of spending some money on conservation easements or protecting lands in Kendall County.
I think a lot of money could be raised very quickly through bond measures to keep our community whole and complete.
Next up is, thank you for being here. Next up is Phil Asher.
Hello, I'm Phil Asher. I'm a resident of the county. I'm actually a third-generation Kendall County person. Live on Spring Creek Road. We have concerns about the loop coming in. As many people in this county have lived here a long time, and they have small properties. And is it going to get them? Do they have any choice? And so it's why I'm here today. We live on Spring Creek Road, and you've just heard my neighbor Skip. We've lived there, both of us, 65 years. He came from San Antonio area. Before that, I lived on out towards to the south, where the loop is there too. I still have family that way. So any way you get it, I've heard about it when it started, 1974 to now. And if it were to get us, the question is it going to get my property or be next to it? I do not want to sell it. I do not want to put 30 houses on it. They're putting 4 houses on an acre of land now. I don't want to do that. That's about it. If you talk to my wife, she would tell you the same thing. If I'm gone, she's still here, she's not going to sell it because she's a widow. I have a daughter, is my 4th generation person in my family. She definitely will not sell it. She really wanted to be here today, but she's a school teacher, and when school starts, you don't take off work. Anyway, this has been boiling for a long time. I have not spoke. I haven't spoken a long time. I was a shop teacher, so I do have an interest in building things per se. But I feel there's a better way to do this than what's going on. It's like it's a law in Texas. You have to have loops to get a loop to get people, around places. There's got to be a modified way to do better. She just spoke about giving information out to the public. And I certainly believe that, people need to know. They don't know. A lot of people here, they've always lived here or sometime do not know. And the new ones, they don't have a clue. So anyway, that's what I feel about the situation. Hopefully we can do better than the loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asher. I hope you didn't hear anything that we said today had to do with the loop, right?
Right.
And the loop is not on our agenda. We're not proposing the loop. Somebody, sir?
Just in case there's such a...
Okay, just want to make sure you understood that we're not proposing that.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, Cindy Bivens. Cindy Bivens, Cindy Molesworth Bivens. Okay. Yes, Sheila had to leave.
Must be present twin.
Next is Pam Hodges.
Here I am again.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I appreciate the consideration that you've given to our policy issues from the subcommittee on trails. Also, your discussion about connectivity with the developed lands, how developers should connect. That's one of the issues that we, actually John Kite and I served on a subdivision rules committee for the 97 rules, and that was one of the main issues, is connectivity and making certain that the taxpayers of Kendall County did not pay for those roads, those major arteries that go through, but that they would stub them out. Also, that houses would not face the major arteries, but they would be boulevards and be beautiful for our county, and like I said, they would be at a developer expense. So one of the policy issues that I hope that you will continue to look at is the fact that those stub outs to adjacent property, as they're developed, that those roads then connect and make a grid so that we do not have the congestion on a state highway, that the schools don't empty out onto a state highway, that people are able to move, that's the whole process. So much of our problem is that these developers, they're arterials, that's it, and they're gated communities, and there's no way through them. I think 281 and Stone Oak is a prime example of what will happen if we don't make those provisions. If for some reason there's an area that may not be developed for a long time, you put in a temporary cul-de-sac so that when it is developed, you have that access. So I just hope that, you're planning for congestion immediately, but I hope that you continue to look forward and know that along the Bear-Kendall County line, with the new school coming in, with Lemon Creek and a new HEB, and how many homes, townhouses, apartments. One of the trails that we've recommended as a short term is dealing with those, not dealing with them, but working with the developers to have trails along Valconis Creek, so they are connecting that school property to the development. So, it's a work in progress, but I think we always have to have a contingency, always need to look forward. And instead of retrofitting, we're planning for the future. So thank you very much for all the work that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Mrs. Gerhardt, I thought you were going to pass today, but not. See, you're here. Good to see you back. While Ms. Gerhardt's approaching the mic, I would ask that anybody joining us by Zoom, if you'd like to make a comment, if you would use the little button and raise your hand, we'll try to get to you there's one speaker after Ms. Gerhardt.
Hello,
Yes,
everybody. I just wanted to mention a couple things. The trails portion of that is going to be added to the report with modifications. That while trails I think are very important, I've said before, my son's a cyclist, and I do believe that people will, as time goes by, our children, et cetera, will have the less opportunity to have 2 or 3 vehicles, et cetera. There needs to be solutions when warranted. But in that Dr. Venny's report, I know it's been said several times today, if the trails is going to be part of this report, Dr. Venny's not to be part of this report, even though I know it's going to be reviewed, would be irresponsible. He is an expert, and I don't do other people's taxes. I'm a CPA. I'm not a CPA. And so that person is a professional expert, and he knows about the environmental concerns. So I really think it should be part of it. And then on the other note, when this committee report is finished, and the members that are here represent the city of Bernie, Fair Oaks, Kendall County. The city of Bernie and Fair Oaks are going to have people that are part of the process. But us in the ETJ in the county, we're going to have our county commissioners. But it's very important, I believe, that this committee, after the report is submitted, hopefully will help the cities, the 2 cities that ultimately could throw it out or put it back in, have some, if they're going to put any line on the map that affects us in the county or the ETJ, that we need representation. We need to hold the line when it comes to it. That so-called social media post that created all this fever, the names on that post were based on a line on the map. And that's not disputed by anyone, whether it was right or wrong to post it. My property, we've talked about this, is for sale. I am being held hostage by it. I have been since this has started. These people here who are in the county or the ETJ and not in the city of Bernie, they can't even go to the city and have a voice, or the city of Fair Oaks and have a voice. We need y'all to stand by this. We don't need lines on these maps. I totally agree with Bryce. Why are they on there? You know, there are people that I can't even contribute to voting for that's going to sit there and put a line on my property, which could not be developed anyway because it's a flag lot. We've talked about that. Anyway, enough of my ranting today. It's just very upsetting. Y'all know this. I've said it a million times. Take the lines off the map. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhardt. Now, you understand that wasn't our line on that map, on that social media post.
I know, but you need to fight for us.
We are.
We are. Listen.
By the way, you do have a county commissioner appointee. You're in which precinct? 2. Who is Elkins?
That's me.
Oh, Bitsy is your representative to Commissioners Court.
No,
Rankin-
to this committee.
To this committee, but I mean, you were
Yeah.
appointed by your county commissioner. I bet she does. Okay, the next person is Merrill Clark.
Merrill Clark, 113 Savannah John in Bernie, just off Ammon Road. I'm going to bounce around a little bit here, but I've been taking some notes since we started. You want to stop the traffic buildup? Why don't we have a moratorium on building? Every time you turn around, there's a new subdivision coming in that has hundreds of homes just up Ammon Road, just as you come onto Ammon Road off 46. It's unbelievable how many houses are out there. And to me, they just sprung up in a heartbeat. I know it was longer than that, but that's how it felt. You know, we can't be all things to all people. And Lincoln said that you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. So I'm thinking that when you guys are talking about micro this and micro bus and micro trails and whatever, that you have to consider that we expect, and the city people expect, that the propositions you addressed, that they would take into consideration and be prioritized as to obtaining the best benefit for the most people. And that's what really should be the objective of the city and for the county, for that matter. You also mentioned something about the developers and that they would be responsible for certain types of construction. And just I'm curious is if the builders know this in advance, or if they start building and then they say, oh, by the way, you guys need to do this and do this. So I assume that the builders are notified in advance that they would be responsible for sidewalks or whatever else. Is that true?
Okay. So on the major thoroughfare, yes. Yes.
You know, we got a full house here today, and we're not here for our health. We're here because of construction projects that concern us all. And we're not talking about Gateway right now, but that'll come up soon enough. Most of us had a difficult time hearing what you folks had to say. And I asked that if, when speaking, you could move up to the microphone so we could hear you more clearly. Is there a main volume so that everybody can be turned up?
We have a main volume, but not everyone has a microphone.
Do you have a microphone?
I have this one that I have to pass back and forth.
I'm sorry?
I have to pass this one back and forth.
Oh, well, we couldn't hear you very well. But anyway, my big suggestion today is that in future sessions of the City Council, and I don't know whether this was done on purpose or just the way it happened to fall, is that the big issues, which is what all of us are here for, is not to hear about all the projects you guys got going and bucket this and bucket that. That's not what we're here for. We're here for the construction project, which really affect all of us. So my suggestion would be that when we have a meeting, when the City Council has a meeting, that you would prioritize, and the most important thing on that list would be what most people are going to be interested in. Because then, once that gets out of the way, everybody here, 90%, can go home, and the other 10% can stay and listen to you folks while you sit back in your chair and talk to each other in a normal tone of voice. You don't have to worry about people in the audience hearing you. I just think it would be very detrimental to have another meeting like this where we would sit through and 90% of us would probably say, I don't ever want to be a part of City Council. But it's just that I know you got a lot of work to do, and I know it's important work. But most of us aren't that interested in that or that interested in what goes on. We leave that up to you and depend upon your judgment so that we don't have to come and sit for a couple of hours while we don't understand what's going on. So maybe ahead of time you can figure out what are people going to come here for. And if you know what that is, let's put that early on the agenda, and then you can do as they've done at the county council. Okay, all of you folks finished with this agenda, you can go if you want. And we would go. And to me, that would be beneficial to not only us in the audience, but to all you folks too. Thank you.
That concludes the comment cards that I have. Or does anybody else in the audience want to make a statement?
Or on virtual?
We got one.
We got one over here.
Or virtual, that's good.
Go ahead, sir. Just give us your name.
My name is William Flessner. I looked around the room and not only recognized a few people. Why is that? Moved away when I was in the 4th grade. My parents moved back here in the mid-'80s. And y'all said the loop isn't part of your scope, but that is why a lot of these people are sitting here is they saw a social media post with a loop. However, on the map y'all did put up, there is a loop on there. It's at a different place than the social media loop shows it, but for all intents and purposes, there was a loop on the map that was posted. It's a little further north than the south side of the loop is listed right now, But if you look at your plan, they all do have a loop planned for Bernie.
This plan right here?
It
I
was
was
one of them
actually-
he had posted up there. There was a whole city ETJ, and it showed proposed
This-
roads. That one there,
Okay,
exactly.
this is the Bernie Thoroughfare Plan. This is from our website. These are
Yes.
all the past studies that have been done for Bernie.
Yes.
So you can find them all there. And this specifically is the latest version of the Bernie Thoroughfare Plan. This is not a work product from our committee.
And we don't endorse or object to that. It's
Then-
just information there.
So it's not part of y'all's committee, but you're using it here at this meeting, though. So that if that's not part of your scope, I wouldn't recommend using it because that particular map does show a loop. And a lot of people are sitting here because of the social media post that shows a loop. And their names are even published associated with this loop. And that includes mine. Now the question is, if that's not part of your scope, then I would not recommend using that because that makes something look really fishy as opposed to what you're saying. The whole meeting, you talk about small projects, never addressed that, but that map was up the whole time. So it's either...
This map is a reference. All of these maps, that's why all of these maps are on our website as references for past studies for what has been done before and what we are speaking about, because not everyone is from this area. We don't know what's happening. And this was supposed to be a comprehensive list for the public and for the committee of what has happened in the past. So when we're talking about it, it's available there for everyone to reference. So as far as us having it up, that was just for us to reference, those who don't have it in their head to look at. But this is a product of the Bernie. This is not us.
Right. But you're utilizing it.
We have to. If we're talking about the major thoroughfare plan, we have to.
I would
so that you guys know what
suggest
we're talking
making your
about.
own that doesn't include the loop. Then it's not hard. It is really not hard to make your own map.
We do
because
have our
if
own
you're using
maps.
this map, everyone in here now is thinking that the social media post that caused all this is for real because there's a loop on that map that you're utilizing, but you're not addressing a loop. So you said, nor did any of the buckets that you talked about address that loop for the most part, except for little places that might have touched in that area that would be considered the loop on the big plan. So to keep the calm, I would suggest making your own map that only talks about the buckets that you're working on. Because the social media post certainly got a lot of people here, and you weren't expecting it. That was clear from your comments. And I'm here because of the social media post. So that's my suggestion. Then you said you're not part of the loop, but then there was a loop on the map. Now we know why. Because it's a map from the past, but you're using it today. So, and this, like I said, it's not hard. It is not hard to make a map. So, thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, I have a Ron Conant with a hand up. Who gets to him? Is that you, Northern? Or
It's on Zoom.
on Zoom? Mr. Conant, can you unmute your
There he is.
Okay, here we go. I think we got you, Mr. Conant. Go ahead. Let's try it.
Well, I guess I didn't realize I put my hand up, so
Can't hear.
Can you get closer to your microphone?
I don't think he meant that comment. He said, I didn't realize I put my hand up.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
You heard?
Was that what he said?
Now, I do not really have any comments as the first meeting I went to. The question is, I guess, is like the last speaker, why do you keep posting that map to allow social media to get crazy out here? I live on Cinco Lane, and that proposal line is about almost on my property line, and so that raises a big concern. There's also Esperanza, which is supposed to go out in that same area, which probably would eliminate that loop anyway because of the because they have bought the ranch behind me. So why do they keep posting that map? It doesn't make sense. Can you answer that question?
The committee early in its process said we need to look at all the studies that have been done. We felt that it would be a prudent thing to do to show that this is a problem that has existed in the community for several decades, and our inclusion of those on a website does not indicate that we're in favor of it or opposed to it. It just indicates that's something that happened. The committee at some point is guilty or is in the trap of trying to answer the question of when did you stop beating your wife? If you answer the question, you're in trouble. If you don't answer the question, you're you're expected to be in trouble. So, we have to do the best we can. We have consistently assured the community that we are not endorsing the loop. I voted as a county commissioner in 2018 against the loop. And so while we appreciate your comments and your concerns, they're misplaced. I don't believe that the social media post came from our map here, but somebody extracted it from a TxDOT document from 4 years ago and circulated it as if it was a current event. And I believe that's irresponsible, but that's my own personal view. This is a free country, and anybody can post what they want to, and we'll bear the consequences, and we'll take the heat. But we will continue to go forward and make our recommendations the best we know how. I don't know if that answers your questions, Mr. Conant, but we felt like it's important we look at all the history of this issue.
Thank you. Yes, you did. I think it's the social media we live with every day. A lot of stuff goes out there that gets us riled up, I guess the best way to put it.
That's true. Is that all your comments, Mr. Conant?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us today.
No, I know we're running late, but could I take do we have another comment?
I don't see anybody else with a hand up, so yes, you can have a closing comment.
Well, real quick, if we could go back to the map that was the Bernie major thoroughfare. I've looked at it, and maybe I'm just not seeing what is given to us, or if people are jumping to a conclusion. I don't see a line that's identified as a loop. I don't see the words loop, and I'm not sure.
So I'd like to chime in on that one. So yeah, I see what you guys are saying as far as the line. One of the things that was going on with the TxDOT proposal is that they were asking the county to grant them the permission to apply eminent domain to take people's properties. The thoroughfare plan, like we talked about earlier, the major thoroughfare plan is more about development. So a land would have to be acquired and be developed before the developer would put in that road. And that's a significant difference between a thoroughfare plan and the gateway. And I see, Wanda, you're shaking your head. I'm not trying to justify one over the other, but I am trying to clarify there's a major difference there in terms of a takings versus.
There should be a difference. But
Yeah.
history is proof in the city of Bernie that major thoroughfare process has not been followed. So you can say it and it sounds good, but it's not. The history is proven otherwise.
Fair enough.
Our recommendations are clear, though, that should happen no more.
And you have repeatedly said the city can do whatever they want with this, what we produce.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, sir.
My name is Les Strieber. I live at 145 Blue Stem Lane, just out Sisterdale Highway. My wife and our name is on the little list that was in the social media. I think I would like to suggest having people on the city council and commissioners here that they write and adopt either a joint resolution or separate resolutions for the county and for the city, that they will oppose any and all efforts to build what we've been referring to as the loop, and that there will be no analysis, there will be no consideration, there will be no funding from the county or the city, and that the city and the county will oppose any efforts by TxDOT to resurrect the loop, and have that as a part of the official record of the city and the county. I think it would go a long ways in stopping some of the rumors. I've gotten calls from friends that sold property to people, and the buyers are calling them, threatening to sue them because they did not disclose to them that there was going to be a Bernie loop. And so it's creating a lot of havoc, even with innuendo. And if the city can do something and the county can do something on the official record, it doesn't stop everything, but it gives all of us a little bit more comfort, and it gives everyone something to point to. And perhaps it'll maybe send a message to the developers that it's not going to be easy to continue developing at a whim and based upon their profit motives. And so that's it. It's just a suggestion. Perhaps there's a resolution out there I'm not aware of, but instead of taking recommendations from a committee, actually have the city council and the commissioners draft a strong worded resolution, and that resolution won't be withdrawn without public notice. So.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're about 30 minutes over. We're going to do closing comments. Gary, Rankin, Mr. Kite.
I'd like to make a comment.
Get up to your microphone.
Most of y'all are talking about the problems are because population growth. We got more people here now. What you need to do is work with, I know the county commissioner, Richard Elkins, worked hard trying to get not only our county but the other counties to work with the legislature to give us the authority to have density control, have things to do with, I mean, we have Senator Campbell doing these water improvement districts. Nobody knew about it. It was secret. And the next thing you know, it's there. I mean, it's out of your control. They have the density, you know, you're talking about 4. They've got, I read the other day, 280 home sites on 28 acres. That's not 4 homes per acre. That's 10. So y'all need to work with the county commissioners and others, with the legislature, to give us some authority to control what's happening around us. Right now, we don't have that authority. So what I'm asking y'all is, you know, I know what you're saying is, and when we moved here 49 years ago, there's 2,000 people living in Bernie. I could lay on Main Street after 6 o'clock and wouldn't get run over. So, but it's different now. We've got 22,000 people in Bernie now. But unless we can convince our legislators and can get out of their control, they're being controlled by the developers, by the realtors, by the materials manufacturers. Until we can do that, we're not going to solve our problems. So y'all just need to get active with the legislature when the term comes up and help do something.
Thank you, Mr. Kite. Bryce?
This is not the city council. I want to clarify that. This is a transportation planning committee. I am a member of the city council, but I started on this before being on city council, and I would encourage y'all that don't live in the city limits to get in touch with me, to come to the city council meeting. I still listen to people that aren't in my district.
In fact, you're a county appointee, is that correct? Precinct 1?
Correct. I will encourage y'all, too, that we are making solutions here to oppose those lines. that is important work that we're doing as a committee. And we have been doing it for a while. And we need your support on those connectivity things too. So I encourage y'all to come back, be here, hear these conversations that we're having. We've had these little bursts throughout our 3-year time period, and I think they're important because we can't do this without y'all's support. And that's really important that we address those issues as they come. Contact me. I'll give you my information. I'll give you my phone number if you want it. And you're welcome to come to City Council. We have a meeting tonight, next week. We had one last week. Seems like every week there's a City Council meeting. But I encourage you to show up and be there because your voice does matter. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, I've been on this committee half the time y'all have been. I was appointed by Mayor Maxson, and the way I caught up, I didn't ask any of y'all, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. I looked at all of the minutes. I like what y'all have done, or now we've done, especially you Northern, in posting minutes of the meetings, every meeting, of posting drafts of what we've provided. Not final, but they're drafts. It's at least telling us what's going on, and that's how I caught up, hopefully caught up, and hopefully have been of value here. But I thank you all for what you all have done. I think we're headed in the right direction. We are following our charge. I would suggest we don't get off our charge. We are not the City Council. I'm on P&Z and Fair Oaks. We are not the P&Z Commission either. So I think we're doing it. Dead ahead. We're almost done.
I have something. I have a couple of things. First of all, I'm sorry that you had to step into our meetings to listen to buckets and small projects. I do want to say early on in our resuming of these meetings, we decided as a committee, consensus-driven, that we were not relitigating the Gateway project that TxDOT continues to resurface every decade or so that I've been here. So I just want to make sure you understand that we are following an agenda. It's at the tail end of our project, a 3-year-long project, and we killed the Gateway as a committee 2 years ago. So I'm sorry it didn't meet your needs to come to the forefront of our agenda today, but our agenda today has already taken care of that. And this loop map is not, it is the city's map. And I have a home that has a line on that map through it. That's why I'm on the committee. There are several other members that do as well. So, if you want to help us with that, talk to Bryce, go to the City Council, start talking to them about lines on the map. We've got it in our policies. And I understand where you're coming from, but and I apologize that we didn't meet your expectations in terms of what our agenda is. But that's my comment to you, and I'm not on the City Council. This is a volunteer committee, a totally volunteer committee with no authority and no ability to compel any of these entities that have formed this committee to do something. So we just don't simply have that kind of power. We can't stop development. We don't have that power either. I empathize with everything that you've said. 2 of my neighbors, 3 of my neighbors are out out there. I would be out there too, except now I'm up here. But I want to recircle back to, do you need a motion to include Dr. Venny's PDF and PowerPoint?
The transcript.
The transcript of it. Because if so, I would like to make that motion.
Okay, I'm going to put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Do my best.
Well said, Bitsy. Just some thoughts. A lot of the focus of a lot of the subgroups, the small work groups, are regarding alternative things like bike paths, pedestrian paths, intersection improvements, really local solutions to local problems, rejecting the loop or the gateway or what have you, because I don't think this committee's goal is to serve as a vehicle to solve San Antonio's regional problems, but rather to focus on the challenges that we have right here in Kendall County. And so I look forward to when the report's compiled. I can totally understand how something like these spreadsheets can be a little bit confusing. And I apologize for being late. I had another meeting with another board that I serve on prior to this. But I noticed that we eliminated today one item that could have been construed as being part of, a gateway loop. So in any event, the whole focus has been about local solutions to local problems and not having something imposed on us from the outside. So I think it's important to stress that.
Thank you, Rich. I'd like to turn to my co-chair, Bob Manning, who's still with us. Bob, do you have any closing comments?
Don, I just have a couple. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes. We can hear you. Could be a little louder.
All right, I'll try to yell.
Perfect.
It's a long way to Santa Fe. First off, I'm really proud of the work that the committee has done today and for the last 2 years. And I just want to offer a reminder to the audience that the committee is made up of people who live and work in this community. This committee's work is not being driven by any outside consultant or by any outside agency. It's you people who are up here on this dais. We are you and you are us. We're doing this together and we're trying to solve some things together. So I would implore you to keep the rhetoric under control and attend and participate and help, because we need your help as we conclude our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and enjoy the rest of your time in Santa Fe. You'll be joining us at the next meeting on the 30th?
Yes.
Great. I want to thank you all for attending. I'm disappointed that Maxie Zinsmeister didn't have anything to say. He's never disappointed me before. But thanks, Maxie. We appreciate you keeping the agenda short. Too late. You missed it. I know you'll be back. Sincerely, I do thank y'all for attending. I appreciate Zach being here today, and I hope you see the hunger there is for the truth getting out there. And I hope that your reporting is thorough and comprehensive, and that you answer the questions that people have foremost in their mind, and that you report what we're doing and continue to report the actions of this committee. I want to echo my co-chair's appreciation to the committee members. Y'all have done a fantastic job, and you continue to do that. For those of you in the audience, these people have most part been here for 3 years working on this. They care very much about Kendall County. They care very much about their neighborhoods, and they care about you. They also recognize that we don't exist in a vacuum. This is still America, the United States of America, and we live in Texas. And in Texas, we have this concept called property rights. And people can do on their property what they want to do. Now, maybe I don't like what my neighbor does on his property, and we're moving a little bit towards being able to influence that. But what my friend John Kite said about our ability to manage that process is important. We need more authority. I'm a county commissioner, served there for 5.5 years. We don't have a lot of control. Andra Wissian is here. She's going to take over in Precinct 2, and I'm sure she's going to get some stuff done. But you need to support these folks. I want to encourage you to, if there's some, and many of you called me, or some of you called me and said, hey, what's this going around on social media? Y'all considering the gateway? And I said, no. I said, thank God. I thought just a bunch of stuff on social media. I met with a couple of people, and they were thankful and appreciative for the work that we're doing and that this committee's doing. And so I want to encourage y'all to express your appreciation to these members who give up their time, give their time away from their families subcommittee meetings and research and everything else. And somebody told me one time you catch a lot more bees with sugar than you do with manure. And so if there's something that's not going on that doesn't make sense to you or that doesn't seem right, before you start throwing rocks, call one of your committee members or call me or call Bryce and say, hey, what's going on here? Would you please clarify this for me? And then if you feel still compelled, then come on and join us and confirm that what we're telling you is the truth. So with those closing remarks, I want to conclude our meeting today. We'll meet again on August the 30th, and hopefully we'll make some progress there and keep moving forward. We are adjourned.
Thank you. You're on your way. We got to get together for coffee sometime.
Yeah.